I've got great news for you. The commerce M&A ecosystem is alive and well in 2025. On this episode, we're going to talk about Dassault's $223 million acquisition of Contentserv through its subsidiary Centric Software. On this episode, we're going to talk about the details of the deal, the background on the company. I've got the co-founder of Contentserv, Armin Dressler, on the pod to give us deep dive into the why, the how, the rationale, and everything. This is going to be a great episode. Let's go. Welcome back to the Inorganic Podcast. My name's Christian Hassold. I'm your host. This is episode 24. This is going to be a great episode. We've got another deal that crossed the line last week, and I've got the board member, founder on the line to talk to us about the deal rationale, and kind of what the company did and everything sort of leading up to the transaction itself to help us get that backstory, which is what we like to talk about here on the Inorganic Podcast. Side note, I know it's been a month since I last posted an episode. I've been super busy. I joined WPromote in January as their head of corporate development. They're one of the largest digital marketing agencies in the United States. They've had me real busy, so I'm a little behind on episodes, but this deal was announced and I just was running as fast as I can to get an episode out there because this is really exciting. It's a company that I know very well. I've been around it for more than a few years, so it's just exciting to kind of see the journey and where it landed today. So this episode is going to cover Dassault's Centric Software, which is a division of Dassault, the $223 million acquisition of Contentserv, which is a product lifecycle management or PIM company based in Germany with a global presence. And here with me on the episode to talk about it is one of the co-founders and a board member and a longtime supporter of the business, Armin Dressler. Armin, welcome.
Hello. Good to talk to you, Christian, today.
Great to have you with us live from Switzerland. You must be feeling really thrilled with how things have turned out. Maybe you could just give a little bit of background on yourself for the listeners so they know who's joining us today.
Yeah, as you said, Armin Dressler, based out of Switzerland here. I'm one of the early co-founders of Contentserv and have been serving as CEO for about 8 years was Contentserv.
So Armin, just before you get into the details, I just want to fill in the listeners on what we're talking about here. On February 25th, Centric Software, which is a division of Dassault Systems. Dassault is a big manufacturing company. They make a lot of things. They announced that their subsidiary had acquired Contentserv to enhance its product lifecycle management offerings by integrating advanced product information management and product experience management capabilities into their platform. This is a strategic acquisition to provide brands, retailers, and manufacturers with a seamless solution that manages product data through the entire life cycle. That is the summary of the press release that they put out into market. They announced the purchase price of $223 million US. And we know that this is roughly north of a 7x deal. In this market, north of 7x is an excellent trading multiple. I'd love to hear from you, your initial view on this acquisition.
I wanted to give a bit of an overview. What's the success story of Contentserv? Why we became that global PIM vendor. And I think one thing we did right was we had a focus. We always called it focus on high ticket, high tech, high touch. Yeah, high ticket items, expensive products that are not commodities, high tech products that are hard to explain, and high touch products that are emotional. It's like luxury fashion stuff, right? And there were others like Stevo, Informatica, Syndigo. They loved huge catalogs in wholesale and retail. And we said, well, that's cool. Let them have it. We focus on cool and unique products with rich data models. So vertical focus was one thing. We always said experience, not data. It's not about the data. It's about experience. As we were the first to coin the term product experience. And even in Japan, we said Shohin Taiken. And everybody in Japan said Shohin Taiken, which is product experience. And that meant for us a combination of PIM and DAM, but also editorial content like the below the fold content, brand content that would sell. And that got us even like very well established in this high ticket, high tech, high touch verticals. We always had a mid-market focus, highly configurable, great time to value was our key value proposition, and a partner-only strategy with great partners that made us grow globally. And if you want to see like what is the most recent big success, I would say none, because our success is constant traction with hidden champions, with awesome mid-market brands, with cool products. There's not that one big brand we won. It was never the focus. And I think the other success was to create success, not failure. Don't overstretch the product. Don't overstretch the organization. And don't frustrate the team by reaching out for something that is out of reach, basically. So I think Contentserv was just, super successful in mid-market with a clear vertical focus.
That's a great kind of a kicking off point. So let's unpack a little bit of that for the benefit of the listeners. Contentserv is what we'll call a product information management company, or PIM. There's other terms that are out there: product lifecycle management, product experience management. And in this universe of software companies, there are sort of enterprise competitors in the market like Stibo, Informatica, and Hybris, has had a solution that I think is probably sunset at this point. So there's some enterprise grade global companies that have had these solutions out there for a long time. And there's been what I would call an up and coming class of category challengers, of which Contentserv was one, inclusive of Salsify, Akeneo, Syndigo, which is kind of an assembly of a lot of different acquired companies that kind of put all these pieces together to kind of challenge the old school way of doing things. So imagine your dad's old, mom or dad's old big station wagon. It was really heavy and, it got the job done, but it was kind of hard to move around. And, you didn't have a lot of tools or capabilities. It's like an AM FM radio and, kind of it wasn't really exciting. It was just a point A to point B thing. And now think about, the more modern version of today's mode of transport, a Tesla, or, a BMW, 7 Series, where you've got, it's an experience and it's delivering an experience to the consumer. And what these product information management companies do is enable brands of all kinds to be able to communicate the product experience to the consumer wherever they are, whether it's on a marketplace like Amazon, on a website like Zalando or Shopify or Magento. However they're trying to reach the consumer, these platforms provide a way for the brands to easily curate the product experience to the client wherever they are. And so I think what you're saying, Armin, earlier is that there's different ways to go to market. One is you can go after the biggest companies, the multi-billion-dollar corporations, and go after multi-million-dollar contracts. It takes a long time to land those contracts. It takes a lot of work to keep those clients happy because they have a lot of demands. They're global. They have a lot of needs, and those needs are expensive to service. And I think what you're saying is it's a choice about the kind of client that you target and the kind of client that they are ultimately trying to attract. And if I hear you correctly, what you're saying is Contentserve's strategy, its recipe for success, was focusing on premium brands that weren't necessarily the largest brands in the world, but premium brands that value delivering a great experience to their consumer. Do I have that right?
Yeah, I think while everyone was still going after huge catalogs and big retailers, we were one of the early ones that said, yeah, but there's a lot of companies out there that also need product information management. And they don't focus on automating, thousands of products. They focus on manually curating products with great content, handmade, different people involved, great usability required to get these people on board of the system, workflows required, and not so much automation. And that's the next generation PIM systems that you mentioned, like Salsify, Akeneo, InRiver, and Contentserv was one of the very successful ones in that second wave PIM systems.
So you make it sound really easy, but I think for especially some of the founders out there who want to know that they're not alone in, building companies along the way and having, different sort of company building challenges along the journey, what are some of the learnings over the time of your building Contentserv with your co-founder partner? What are kind of some of the learnings you have? I think about, I think at one point you started the product as a perpetual license product with support, and it was more of a, we'll kind of customize and build it for you. It was more of a transition to the SaaS world. So maybe you could talk a little bit about their journey from kind of building for one kind of customer and really identifying the right long-term customer for the business.
Well, if you look at the long history of Contentserv, we even started like as a web CMS system. That was before my time, before I acquired my stake in Contentserv, and we served even like political parties and car dealers with websites, and that was the early days. And I think every company has an ideation phase, and maybe you don't invent the company like you always say. I had the idea and it was great and it worked out. We had the same like early days, and then we were at about $1 million revenue or something, and I was asked to help, and I said, look, it's PIM. It's not like the other thing. Let's drop the newsletter. Let's drop the e-commerce. Let's drop everything we built that doesn't work. Let's build a great PIM model based on this configurable data model. So the first right decision, I think, was focusing 100% on PIM and getting rid of everything else. So focus is basically, once you know what works, focus on what works and get rid of what doesn't work. That's my key advice. And then I think once you know what works, focus on the verticals, on the company size, on the markets that work. We got really strong in German-speaking market first, but then we got ambitious, and that was also completely right. We were market leader in Japan for PIM. We were one of the first that went over and said, hey, here's PIM. So ambition needs to be there, and you need to have failures. And then of course we were bootstrapped, so we needed to feed the people, and the only way to feed the people was sell one project after the other. And perpetual license was great for that, because we could sell a bunch of large licenses, and we're good for another year to go. And then we found out at some point it was clear. We can't make that SaaS transition. It was required. It was coming. It came so much faster through COVID, but we've seen it coming and we prepared for that. But whatever we calculated, it was taking like 10 to 20 million to do that SaaS transition. It's a big fish to swallow. And that's when we got InvestCorp on board as a private equity house to finance basically that SaaS transition. We've not changed much in the strategy. Basically, we did a little bit of housekeeping here, was transfer pricing, the financial engineering part, but we needed money, and we got through that SaaS transition really well. And once that was sorted, and it took a bit of, we needed to be brave, because we got like, I don't know we had 5, 6, 7, 8 million losses in some of the worst year on paper, but it was a SaaS transition according to plan. Yeah, and that worked. And I think once you got through that and you've got an ARR-based break even, and you have more cash every month on the bank account, and you can decide where you want to go and what you want to do with that cash, that's when you're in great shape. Let's put it this way.
And I think this is the right time to probably highlight that, one of the key decisions you made during this transition to being backed by private equity was to make some leadership shifts. And so I think it'd be important to recognize Michael Kugler's critical role, becoming a leader of your choice to take the business to the next level. Could you talk a little bit about the decision to bring him on and what he's contributed to the success of the business that's led to this acquisition?
Yeah, I mean, look, first of all, I was CEO, and I got along all right and well with InvestCorp. It was fun, but at some time I had the feeling fresh blood and maybe also a little more drive and new ideas would be great to the business. Michael Kugler is a long-time business friend. He worked with me in my first PIM company. It's like 25 years back that I know Michael Kugler. And I remember how we flew to, in my plane back then, we flew to Eastern Germany to sell a PIM system. And we chatted on this plane, and he said, "This is so cool." He also is pilot now, by the way. So we talked about the future, and we just had this good vibes, and we crossed paths many times. And I talked to him, and I talked to him, and I talked to him, and I said, "Michael, you really need to do this for me. Come and join us." And he's been with Contentserv before in a sales leadership role. And when he said, "Yes, I'm ready," I called InvestCorp and said, "That's it. Like, I've got the new CEO. I want to step down. Here's the guy." I was 100% sure he would do it, and he exceeded my expectations by far.
Yeah. Well, awesome. I think it's great to acknowledge leadership. I think it's also good to acknowledge, like, one of the hard parts about being a founder, about being a CEO, is knowing your strengths and knowing when to bring people around you to drive the future success of the business. It's a tough decision to make, but it's also can be quite a relief, especially if you know the person you're bringing in is the right person for the role and someone who you can trust to do right by the business.
Look, the biggest horror, I think, for a founder is hand over controls of the business, which you do when you hand over majority. And then get a CEO who gets all these great new ideas. I want to change everything. I have a much better plan. A company at that stage needs evolution, not revolution. And Michael's been the most awesome guy because he doesn't have the ego to change things for the sake of changing it. He can, execute on a strategy that worked out in the past. And he's humble, but then managerially enough, to get everyone on board, customers, partners, the employees, get everyone behind him and not shine by himself on a stage, which is also a big problem with founders sometimes. And I knew Michael is more of a people guy than myself. I'm probably more of a mastermind of inventing things, but I don't have that passion for. There's everyday management, for executing, for patience, and he's the most awesome manager for growing and scaling an organization, getting everyone on board, and make everybody work in the same direction.
It's a very unique skill set that I think I've been talking with my chairman, Stephen Power, who I work with now at W Promote. We've been talking about working with founders and just how they're wired differently. If you can imagine, there's not a lot of people who fully appreciate waking up one morning and saying, "I'm going to start a company today. I'm going to build a product out of thin air. I'm going to dedicate my life with no guaranteed pay to build this business and turn it into something. I'm going to get 5 customers, 10 customers, 100 customers. I'm going to figure out how to build a great business like that." The journey from 0 to 1 is a journey that many very successful entrepreneurs have taken, but many millions of people would be deathly afraid of taking the first step. And then there's that journey from 2 to 3 to 4, which requires a different skill set, which is kind of that, polished CEO. You have to kind of depart a little bit from the innovation and the creative thinking and be a little bit more practical and structured in the way that you operate to get the business to the next level. And I think it's really important that we acknowledge there is a role for both kinds of leaders, and that transition is a very healthy, natural transition that happens in every business. There's very few examples where CEOs remain on. You can think, about probably the most famous known example, Mark Zuckerberg bringing Sheryl Sandberg into Facebook to really be an operator while he could be the innovator. But, those are kind of like the $1 billion examples, but there's many other examples like the one we're talking about here, where you just sort of recognize when you've reached a limit and where you want to give someone else the opportunity to take it to the next level. which Michael definitely did. So why don't we talk a little bit about sort of this, the sale process itself. So what made it the right time for Contentserv to go out to market, as we say, to run a process?
It was a good fit from everything. Like the timing was right. InvestCorp acquired the majority in 2019, late 2019. So for them, it was a 5 years, 3x kind of setup. I was just thinking was also time for them to let go. They did a lot of housekeeping, helping us. A great collaboration in the board. That was great. But what was the next step, right? Like, what's the next step would have been costly, like growing massively in US, the dominance play, or become a true PXM player, right? Like we call ourselves PXM. In my definition, a PIM player is not a PXM. We need to do real-time content delivery. We need to understand the customer domain, the segmentation. So a lot of things that go beyond PIM, and that was probably out of reach financially because it would mean new investments, add-on investments, and it's just from a fund perspective, it makes sense after 5 years at a good price to sell. Now, for myself, I have my own investment fund, Exuberance Capital, and Exuberance and my co-founder, Patricia, we still owned more than 35% of Contentserv. So we had a massive exposure there financially. So we had the great relationship, and InvestCorp followed us on most of the strategic guidance. And Michael Kugler, I think we were on the phone sometimes 5-6 times a week, several calls a day. It was the most awesome relationship I could imagine. But then, we did that one acquisition, Shopping Feed, but I think we felt like this is it. Like, it got really hard to buy the next thing, the next ambitious thing, let's say. Right. So we couldn't acquire futuristic components, let's say. It was more of a multiple arbitrage thing, right? Buy something at a multiple 3 to 4 and sell it at 6 to 8, something. That was a mindset. And to become a true PXM leader, for me, that means tailor-made product content at every step of the customer journey. That's my vision. Like, whenever you interact with the product of a company, you get tailor-made product content. That was basically out of reach, right? So for me, it was the right time because I've built up my own, PXM focused portfolio. Not building a PIM. It's like there's great PIM systems out there. But supporting companies like the crawler that provides market insights, the onboarding tool that onboards data at scale, AI-based content generation. I've got a very cool company for CRO for conversion rate optimization, PDP, heuristic commerce that I'm backing. So for me, it was a great timing to take money off the table and be able to build out my own portfolio. Right. So it's just more firepower and less exposure on one single thing.
Yeah. So natural right time in the PE back journey. The PE generally likes to hold for 4 to 5 years before they exit. So right time for them, right time for you. And I think the company had been through an incredible journey in the transformation of the business and the financials all around. So makes a lot of sense. So the process itself, if you just share with the listeners, who were the participants in the process outside of Centric? Like, was it mostly strategics? Was it PE? Was it a mix? Kind of who were the participants in the process initially?
I mean, look, it was a mix. Like, Contentserv is the hot girl in town everybody wanted to date. Like, there were hundreds of people because you couldn't find many of these, like growing 30%, profitable, rule of 40, international. I mean, all the tick marks were there. So a lot of people came around, a lot of financial investors, but I was not convinced of the financial investors because nobody had a very strong vision. Everybody was listening, but nobody had a passion. Not the true passion. We want to take this to the next level, and here's our plan. Are you in? Is something I was missing, but there were a lot of them. Interestingly, most of them in a very similar price range also.
Mm.
We had a bunch of strategics, a good bunch of strategics. They were like the bottom feeders, I would say, like that.
Sure.
They were also looking for multiple arbitrage, which was not that interesting. And I don't want to disclose who else was there in the strategic, but
I wouldn't want you to. Yeah.
It was close, right? It was close, but in the end, it was also the great match. Like pricing was very similar, very close, but Centric was just a natural buyer for Contentserv. Something, I deeply appreciated. When I started in marketing, we always had this saying: define the value, create the value, communicate the value. Define happens early when you say, what products do you need? Create is the build, the PLM, the CAD process, and then came communicate the value. I always said, I'm focusing on communicating the value that others build. So for me, it was natural. I worked with PLM software mostly. At that time, it was parametric, and it was the PTC, right? PTC
Yes.
was we worked with, and we were the last mile in this define, create, communicate the value. When Centric came around, I mean, look, they're also focusing on high ticket, high tech, high touch. They just don't say it, but if you look at the verticals they're serving, it's exactly the same. There's a lot of fashion in there. It's some brand manufacturers, all awesome products. And I thought, oh, wow, this is it. Like, it was very early that we said, this is going to be it, right?
Yeah, I think I love that angle of the story. I think I want to go back to one thing you said about the participants in the process. I don't think this is unique to the PIM or the commerce market, but I think one of the challenges that financial investors have right now is, number one, most companies are not doing very well. They're not growing 20 or 30% year over year. They're not highly profitable, rule of 40, if you will. There's not many. So when they see one, they almost are in a state of disbelief, and kind of, their first, I've observed that their first reaction is like, what are they hiding? Something must be wrong. We're going to inherit like some kind of mess that we have no idea is existing under the covers. And I also note that because, more broadly, not a lot of investors are making material acquisitions in commerce, that they don't really have a true mark. And what I mean by a mark is investors like to sort of see a consistent pattern of other investors, other strategics paying 7, 8, 9, 10x multiple for something, so they can feel confident that they know the multiple range that they're putting down is market. And so it was unique in this case because there hasn't been a company in your category that's traded in a while. Several of the companies that are in the category that we've already talked about took investment in 21 and 22 during the height of the market, and those investors are underwater, and everyone kind of knows they're underwater. So I think the financial investors are twofold, is like not really sure how to market, but I think they also didn't fully understand just all the places that this category of product is relevant. When we think about where a product information management system company can exit, we typically think Adobe, SAP, IBM, Oracle. We don't really think about Dassault, a 54 billion market cap company with 6 billion in revenue that has a subsidiary called Centric Software that's doing product lifecycle management. If you think about the number of companies that have lifecycle management buried inside the company somewhere, it's a much larger opportunity space than one might think. And I think that we sometimes get a little bit too narrow in our thinking in terms of where these things could go. And naturally, if a financial investor is wondering, well, if I buy it at 100 million, who's going to buy it for 300 million in 4 or 5 years? And so I think that probably speaks to a little bit of what you probably saw in the process, was investors kind of coming in at maybe a multiple of 5 and saying, hey, interested, but not wanting to lean in too much. But this is a unique case where you found a strategic that really understood the product and had a need for it. And so I'd love for you to talk a little bit about, through your lens, What was the reason why this was the right thing for Centric Software? What was their pain? What was their need? What does Contentserv solve for them?
Yeah, I mean, you already introduced Dassault Systems, which is kind of cool, to have a mother company that has all this professional staff and the firepower to, basically make such an acquisition relatively fast for a strategic. And Centric is based in Silicon Valley, so it is like a cool American company and PLM brand focused on brands, consumer products, unlike others that are heavily engineering focused. So they're more on the lighter side of the market, which goes along well with Contentserve. And if you look at Centric today, they're already beyond the PLM. They've acquired a German company for digital shelf analytics. There's planning, pricing, market intelligence, actionable dashboards involved. So it's beyond classical PLM, which helped, right? And it's led by Chris Groves. Like he's been CEO of this company since 1997. Like imagine that in Silicon Valley, having a CEO serving for 27. It sounds more like a Japanese company. But I think this is good. Like there's a guy with strong vision, with strong determination, very instrumental to make this deal happen. He got along with Michael Kugler like a house on fire. So why did they go for Contentserve? First it's define, create, communicate the value. He knew it's a great deal to extend the value proposition to communicating the value, and the PIM is just right. So he knew that. We had that super good vertical fit. Some joint customers for an easy upsell and a good lighthouse customer story. But many that are naturally, they can just be cross-sell. So like so many customers that don't have a PIM in their space and vice versa. So that helped a lot for the synergy case. Contentserve brought to the table this mindset for time to value, configuration over customization, where Centric said, well, this is something which we can learn and adapt. Also the partner strategy. Contentserve is strong on partners. Centric is more of a direct to market company. I think, to be honest, like it was a cheap deal, like 220. It doesn't sound euros, right? Doesn't sound cheap. But if you look at how big Centric is with 750 million revenue, it extends, the value proposition from defining and creating the value to communicating the value in a very credible way. So basically, Contentserve is just like a 25th of the recurring revenue of Centric. It's a very small acquisition with a global footprint. So I think in that sense, size does matter. It was easy to swallow, like a big deal in numbers, but a small deal in terms of size. And Centric saw we get a very stable management, a global presence, very solid KPIs, partner networks. So we get a lot of assets with a relatively viable acquisition.
Yeah, and I think you can't underappreciate the fact that ultimately Dassault is a very material manufacturing company. Product lifecycle management is a part of everything they do. So it makes sense that they would own a software company that specializes in this area because it's a need for them. I think the other thing that is worth mentioning is financial investors and I think everyone knows, like, largely Contentserve's business was Europe and Japan, and a lot of investors were thinking, how do we get this in the US? What kind of investment would be required to get Contentserve in the US? How would you go to market? How would you compete effectively? It can be noisy to go from Europe to US or US to Europe. Centric solves for Contentserve. They've got, in day one, easy go to market in the US. They're in Silicon Valley. They're a global company. They can put this product into market in the US and become a material player very easily. It's great when you already have all that infrastructure on the ground to do that. So I think that's probably a mutual value and the reason why for both companies.
A very smart observation, Christian. And by the way, Contentserve, we always said at Contentserve, we have to go to the States to prove we can get customers happy. We've got customers like Brooks Running Shoes and really awesome customers. Electrolux USA is working with Contentserve. that was proof point enough for Centric to say Contentserve is really competitive in the US. They have a right to win, but we never wanted to grow big in US because we thought, why fight in a red ocean when we can conquer Japan and other places that are easier and with a much lower customer acquisition cost. So that was many financial investors didn't get the beauty of the strategy, not to go into US and keep it for the next person to do it. And they were constantly nagging about, but you were not so successful in the US. And we had to explain, but we never tried to scale up. It is the next chapter in our history. And Centric got that. They got that.
Yeah.
Good enough to win, but there's a huge market still to upsell or sell into. So.
Got it. And you'd mentioned that the CEO of Dassault was involved. The CEO of Centric was involved. Did they have a corporate development leader involved as well?
Well, there were a lot of people involved, but the CEO of Dassault was part of the deal, and Chris Groves was the key sponsor of the deal, fighting every day to push this over the line.
Yeah. That it's awesome to be able to acknowledge people who have made these things happen. Let's we're getting kind of to near the end. We want to round this out. I think to zoom out for us. I think as comrades in the PIM and commerce ecosystem, what does this mean for PIM and commerce? I can think of two things. One is that when it comes to financial investors thinking about their current holdings in this space, you have to really have a much broader aperture for who a potential buyer could be. And I'm guilty of this as an advisor because I frequently point to Adobe and Salesforce and Shopify as the likely acquirers of commerce capability. Dassault would have never crossed my mind, and I think that is a terminal miss on the part of people who have a responsibility to think about what strategic exits can look like in this space. I think that's one takeaway. Another takeaway is that you can never, there can be a solution for a lot of different use cases. And just because, one is serving global companies with billion-dollar problems and another is serving mid-market companies with $100 million problems doesn't make one or more any more or less valuable. This company, as I understand it, is north of a 7x multiple trade. That is fantastic in this market. That is a great win. So we have to acknowledge Bob Flanagan at Raymond James, who led the charge on the sell side for this process. I mean, it's kudos to him for finding this strategic and bringing him to the table. That you definitely owes a prize there. I wonder, though, what takeaways you might have, Armin, as we're kind of thinking of the wrap here.
I mean, look, you asked about what it means for the PIM market. First, it's really cool. We'll get that integrated chain up from defining the product, detecting assortment gaps, finding what's right for the market, engineering it with CAD, CAM, 3D, PLM, to communicating the value. That's the first time we have that, like an integrated value chain, which is cool. Centric goes above and beyond that. They have a closed loop vision. It's something we always drove at Contentserve. It involves analytics. It involves AI-based product strategies. They already have that. I believe their closed loop will be more introspect, like more inside the company and less customer-centric, because since it's PLM, it's not that customer-obsessed as e-commerce might be, right? Now, what does it mean for the PIM market? I think it all depends on execution, right? It could be become the strongest offering on the planet for high-value products. It could be really, really big. It could also be just another PIM swallowed by one larger to disappear in a much larger organization, right? So it depends a lot on what's happening next. It depends on Chris and Michael and the management. I'm full of hope it's going to be something big here. I believe it's a big opportunity for the adjacencies. PXM, as Gartner and Forrester define it, it's not really that public yet either. But there's much more than PIM. It's about CDP, customer segmentation, next best content for the customer journey, the whole tailor-made product content. I believe it's a huge opportunity to build up upon what Centric has done, but also what others need. yeah, it's a huge opportunity for integrators working with Contentserv to grab Centric as another big thing to work with. And I think this market, anyways, I think this PIM market will evolve into something much bigger. I always kept telling at the beginning, I said, product content is the fuel of e-commerce. I don't believe it's the fuel of e-commerce anymore. It's the heart of e-commerce. PIM is at the heart of e-commerce. The transaction to put something in the shopping cart is just like the final step in a long customer journey that is product centric and starts way before putting something in the shopping cart. So I think PIM has a big future ahead. And I think everyone in the market, I would say, stay strong, believe, and do a good job, right? Do a good job. And I don't think do not overstretch your company. I think also the financial sponsors should not overstretch things. There's a bright future for PIM if you do a good job, right? That's my closing statement for you.
That's a great place to land it. I have to say that you're one of my favorite founders in the commerce ecosystem. Your door's always open. You've lent a bed to me. We've had some great times hanging out in Germany and Switzerland. For a different time, we'll have to tell the story of how we got introduced in the first place. There'll have to be another podcast episode, but you've just always been a real genuine human. And I think this episode really highlights why this is such a great success story, the people behind it. So I want to congratulate you, Invest Corp, and especially Michael Kugler on a successful exit to Centric. And congratulations to Dassault. You got a real winner here, and I hope you do great things with it. To all my listeners, thanks so much for joining me on this episode of the Inorganic Podcast. If you enjoyed the conversation, please like, subscribe, share it wherever you can. Until next time, we'll see you.